African leaders arrived in Istanbul for the first United Nations Humanitarian Summit. Notably was Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto. His arrival comes days after some members of the United Nations Security Council met with Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta, hoping to get him to rescind his decision to close down the Dadaab refugee camp. But they were unsuccessful, presenting a looming humanitarian crisis if the Kenyan government goes ahead with a planned closure at the end of 2016. Dadaab refugee camp is home to about 350,000 asylum seekers, mostly from Somalia. While the Kenyan government has cited security reasons, it also says it cannot sustain the camp any longer, given a sort of laxity from donors to support running of the camp. They argue the international focus is now on the European migration crisis. But it's not just Kenya facing a major humanitarian crisis. The United Nations projects that about 87 million people in a dozen countries will require humanitarian aid in 2017 to the tune of about $20.1 billion. The conflict in Yemen has seen at least 6,000 people killed. It is estimated that 170,000 people have fled to Djibouti, Somalia and Ethiopia, countries that are donor dependent. Tanzania will also have much to talk about during the summit. Over the last year, it has had to deal with a massive influx of asylum seekers from Burundi. According to the United Nations, at least 450 people have been killed since April 2015 and more than 2,000 people forced to flee to Tanzania. In Tanzania's Kagunga village, the original population was 11,382. Now it has increased to over 90,000 since April, with between 500 and 2,000 people arriving daily. South Sudan may be coming out of a gruesome 2-year civil war. However, it's estimated that 3 million people are at risk of starvation, especially those communities that are in rebel strongholds. In southern Africa, it's a humanitarian crisis occasioned by the El Nino phenomenon. Zimbabwe has 4 million people at risk of starvation. According to UNICEF, Malawi has 2.8 million at risk of starvation, including 1.5 million children. West and North Africa's humanitarian crisis is occasioned by mostly extremism in Nigeria. Boko Haram has rendered 2.4 million people homeless. On the health front, West Africa is dealing with the aftermath of Ebola, with occasional flare-ups that could cause more damage. And finally, yellow fever that has already claimed at least 230 lives in Angola could potentially spread to other countries if not managed well. Given Angola's already weak public health system, it needs international assistance to control the outbreak. So African leaders do have a lot to talk about in this year's summit, but some critics feel the summit will not bring about much change to the situation. Catherine Ogunde, CCTV.